Yo, what is going on, guys? Prometheus back here yet again with another episode of Risk, Reward, and Fire. But today, what we have here for you is there is no floor. Yeah, we're going to be talking everything price as usual. I'm going to be letting you guys know kind of what's going on in the markets, what are my thoughts, and where we're headed. Let's dive on in. So, really, so first off, obviously significant sell-off across the board. We're seeing, in my opinion, just this is one of the largest sell-offs I've ever seen in the market. If we look at, from a measured move perspective, kind of what we're seeing, in relation from a standard deviation point, the last time we had, or from a measured move based off of standard deviation, Z-score, the last time we saw a sell-off this significant on the weekly was the 2018 lows. We're pushing we're at a 3 standard deviation move on the weekly for Bitcoin as of right now. If we go to the daily, we are, well into the, demand territory, if you want to call it, of, generally speaking, from a move perspective, man, I can't talk. Typically what we do see, at least out of this region, is some form of mean reversion. Now, if we go into the charts, right, let's dive on into the charts, and we're going to be getting a little bit more into the weeds and the nitty gritty here. So the high time frame was marked out. I think we did a good job of that last week, touching on the high time frame, where we're headed, and my thoughts, really. So locally speaking, we have seen $1 billion of long liquidations in the past 24 hours. It's pretty substantive. I can't talk this morning, guys. What is going on? It's pretty substantial. And leading up until this point, really this morning, we have seen more so controlled selling, right? It's been stair-steppy price action. If we drop this down onto the 1 hour, what I mean by that is you've seen price just kind of, stair-stepping, and then it culminated really last night into this morning with the significant sell-off into the demand region. Now, from what we're seeing from a standard deviation move on the daily, on the weekly, from a supply and demand mechanics perspective, we're now bouncing out of demand. RSI is, on the daily, extremely oversold. The MACD, I think, has never been this oversold from a statistical perspective. You came down, you wicked the 85K wick low, which is important because if you look at candles that do not have wicks to the upside or to the downside, 99% of the time they get tagged. And so that's what we had at this 85K region, both on the daily and the weekly, so multi-time frame confluence perspective. And we've now taken that low. So just what I'm seeing here from a TA perspective leads me to believe that it does make sense to bounce at this region. Like this is your, okay, you got to bounce here. If we continue to sell off, we then get into the discussion that there's maybe some systemic issues happening on the back end, like somebody big is blowing up actively and more people are. If we look at ETH, very similar thing happening on ETH, right? We had the daily, unfinished candle, you can call it, no wick candle. It was swept. We also tagged the demand region here from our point of origin. And why is this region significant? This is where market makers and whales and smart money stepped in to buy. This is where they really, entered into the positions, or entered heavily into their positions before our run up to the range highs, before they then distributed at those range highs, their positions, unloading them for a nice 2x, roughly, right? A little bit less, probably 70%. So this region has a lot of confluence, right? It has a contextual meaning and a contextual understanding. Now, do I want to be long here? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We discussed last week the high time frame perspective of where we were at, right? Market structure across the board is broken. Across the board, Solana, we did sweep our high time frame liquidity, another confluence for, why it would make sense to bounce out of this region. So if I don't want to long here and we still are accepting the trend is to the downside, what does that mean, right? What does that mean? That means that I want to be looking for short opportunities because I still think that we have much lower prices to be had. I marked those prices out for you guys. We can go over them yet again. And we've been talking about this for a significant amount of time. We had our 2 high time frame weekly divergences. And when we play divergences, we are looking for a retest of the lower extremity of demand within those divergences, at least if it's bearish. If it's bullish, you're looking for the furthest extremity of supply, right? So our lowest extremity of demand is, 52.5, right? 49 to 52.5K. Could we be a little bit more gracious and say like 55 to 56? You absolutely could. But those are like, that's how we play divergences, right? And so if we have those targets marked out, but we understand that within our current move to the downside, we're extremely overextended. Could we become even more overextended? Absolutely. But it makes sense that just from a chart perspective, we bounce here, right? And so if I'm expecting a bounce, where do we then short to then target our, higher time frame targets? That's what we should look at. And again, we bounce out of demand. Where do I think we come into? So if we look at Bitcoin from an origin perspective, right, this demand is now flipped into supply. So this is now a breaker block for price. It would also coincide if we bounce from here, and this region is 98K to 102. So if we come up into that region, that's as high as you're going to get. This is our structural high. So you could come up into 98K, or our structural supply region, excuse me. You could come up and do an underside retest of structure while also coming up into supply at 95. So anywhere between 95 to 98. And this is your high time frame confluence area to be looking for shorts across the board, right? And so I'm not looking to short down here in this pit, right? If you're already in shorts, which we've been in shorts in the BB Discord, then you, one, maybe take a little bit of exposure off the board. That way, you've captured some profits. That's never a bad thing to do. 2, you're still leaving some on just in case this is systemic and we see further selling. You still have more exposure, or you still have exposure to capture that downside. But it makes sense to get bounces across the way or along the way. Very, very, very rarely do we ever, if not ever, go straight up in a straight line or straight down in a straight line. It almost never happens. So I'm not going to bet on that. I'm going to be betting on a bounce, but I'm not going to be buying that bounce. I'm not going to, because of how aggressive the sell-off is. You have to understand context. Sellers are, extremely in control of this market right now. I don't want to fight this trend one bit, but from a contextual standpoint, it makes sense we bounce. But I'm not going to be fighting the high time frame trend. I'll just look to re-enter my shorts and then get back on the next wave, right? That's what it's all about. I'm going to get on, ride the wave, get off, and then I'll get back on the next wave and I'll take it in, right, to our high time frame targets. So where do we come up into? 95K makes sense. And this is going to be so dangerous for so many people in the market because so many people are going to be saying how we're going to be going to new highs. They're going to be longing those regions. They're going to be buying back all their bags because they feel like they sold the bottom. And then that will be the reversal then to the targets. Unfortunately, that's probably what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of long liquidations, a lot of long liquidity that's going to enter back into the market. And it's ultimately just going to be harvested so that we can go lower, right? That's what is happening. And that's what's probably going to happen. That would be my bet. I'd be very shocked, like I said, if we go straight down in a straight line. Now, what do I expect for equities? I could see equities being fairly resilient until probably the second to third week of December. Fairly resilient. But I understand most people listening to this are probably crypto natives. So let's leave equities to the side right now. What if you're still in and holding altcoins? What if? Which a lot of people are. And I understand it if you are, right? You, along this entire sell-off down, have probably been in the mindset, I don't want to sell the lows. I don't want to sell the lows, right? And it's easy to get there because they're so worried that you're going to sell the lows, it's going to bounce and V reverse and V recover. And then it's like doubling down on your mental anguish. But you should never be hoping. You should only be reacting to what price in the market is telling you and giving you, which is understandable. So it's a learning lesson. You should take it as a learning lesson. And the most important thing is to allow yourself to fight another day. That is the most important. Oh goodness, my mic just fell. The most important thing is that you, again, learn to fight another day. If you're wrong on a thesis, that's totally okay. Totally okay. But you have to have invalidations. And so where are altcoins headed from here? Let's jump into our favorite chart. Total 3 ES, high time frame. Breaking descending, breaking the ascending trend. We are now clearly in a change of trend. You are clearly in a break of structure with the, break here of 675 bill, roughly. RSI is a lot more room to the downside. You're coming into a, little bit of a demand region, but if you play this as a higher time frame trend, realistically, range lows is next at 450 bill. But then if you also zoom out, we have another trend or another high time frame range. This is our larger range, right? You have a high time frame range, or you have a high time frame range within a higher time frame range. So you have a range within a range. So you have 2 points that you really want to be looking at. One is going to be 450 bill, and the next spot is going to be sub 300 bill, right? This is all going to be demand within here. This is going to turn into demand, right? But if we look at it from a contextual standpoint, the market looked fantastic, by the way, until it didn't. Unfortunately, then that's sometimes what happens, and that's what we were expecting altcoins to do better than they did, and the market just didn't give it to us, which is fine. But what do we expect now? Similar to last cycle, you had a 3 top pattern, right? 1, 2, 3. You had two tops, and then you had a shoulder. We just had our shoulder, and so after you break that shoulder. After you broke that shoulder last cycle, what did alts do? Alts went down another 65%. So if we're looking at this measured move right now, we're only down minus 20%. So alts, interestingly enough, could come back down into 240 bill. And that would not be shocking or out of the question. So if you're worried about selling a low here from a contextual standpoint versus what we're seeing last cycle, we're still in a high time frame downtrend. We understand that bottoms form over months, not days. Bottoms range at lows, they don't V recover unless you see intervention in the market like massive printing or whatever. And then if that happens, you just buy back your bags and we ride everything to Valhalla. Now is the time to get out of the market. To be out of the market, to be cash, to be net short, either one. Preserve that capital to fight another day. That's where we should be at. So that's kind of what I want to leave you guys off with today, right? We still have a lot more room to the downside. Locally, it makes sense we bounce. That bounce is going to be dangerous for a lot of people. but don't be just like hoping and praying for the bounce. As of right now, from a technical perspective, it makes sense. And may lead into like some form of underside retest of this trend line on stable coins, or not on stable coins, on altcoins, and then you get your final capitulation. I just don't want to be in altcoins hoping for a bounce, and what if we don't even get the bounce, right? That's not the camp you want to be in. And I do not want to be long anything here, truthfully. So that's what I got here for you guys. Today was a very insightful day. I left you guys with a lot of alpha, a lot of discussion, a lot of hopefully things to think on. And we're going to be buying the lows on these calls on Fridays, or on these videos on Fridays, when that time comes. And we're going to be riding the trend until things change. So that being said, this is Prometheus. Before I leave you guys, like, comment, subscribe, follow me over on X, follow the BB YouTube, follow the BB channel and page over on X as well. Turn on post notifications, like, comment, subscribe as always. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.